Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here to review Power Rangers episodes. So, today I had gone on to cut my own hair as per usual, and left me with just this kind of weird, awkward kind of hair. So I was like, alright, let's go with it today. Let's have fun with it. Because, hey, you can probably only have this kind of hair once, or until it eventually gets cut even more. But so we have me see these Power Rangers episodes, and the theme of these 3 episodes, of course, are to be seeing double. So within the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episodes, Rangers Back in Time Part 1 and 2 from Season 2, episodes 39 and 40, we are to see double in the fact that we, through this two-parter, are to not only have adult and child Power Rangers, we also go on and see double in the fact that we have a monster called Photomare that is to duplicate Rocky's Zord to then have not only the Megazord needing to fight the evil Dragon Zord, but then is to have to also take down Photomare as well. We also, in this two-parter, have Tommy fighting Goldar, which is always a great thing, and we have a bunch of monsters that are to always be a thing that I really enjoy about a Power Rangers episodes, where you have just a lot of monsters trying to fight the Rangers. And this leads us to realize in this two-parter the way of which that we get to the Rangers going from adults to becoming younger is because of the Rock of Time. So, just a weird, goofy rock that I just don't quite understand why a rock needed to, take us back in time. That just seems so unusual. But, hey, they've come up with so many goofy stories in Power Rangers. Why not have the Rock of Time be one of them? And so then we also go into Strange Relations, a Dino Thunder episode. And this is episode 30. So I wanted to go into this episode because the Jade Gladiator looked really cool. And then coming to find out in the episode, we would of course have Trent, who is fighting off against an evil version of himself. And I was like, alright, yeah, this kind of works with kind of the whole seeing double kind of idea. And we also have the Rangers who are having to fight off multiple monsters here. And so I'm like, alright, everything seems fairly similar. I really enjoyed all 3 of these episodes. Here is the thing, I might go on and probably complain a lot more about the Mighty Morphin episode than I probably would the Dino Thunder episode, because I feel like there's a lot of things that don't quite make sense in those Mighty Morphin episodes, or there is also me wanting to complain about the fact that we either have Zed or we have Alpha and Zordon that are consistently coming in to have to just restate things that have already happened a lot through this two-parter, and that gets really annoying. And I know that these characters would often just go on and do that to just eat up time, but it seems that, I noticed that even more so in this two-parter than I ever have. And also, for me, there'd be a lot of times where I would just kind of forget about the Alpha and Zordon scenes, or kind of forget what exactly everything is to be said about like the on the villain side, because they would just kind of repeat things. So either way, I think it's about that time to just say that it's about that time yet again to just go into spoilers. I wish to watch every single one of these episodes on YouTube, so you can go through and see every one of these if you want to check them out, because I really did enjoy them. I thought that they were, the Mighty Morphin episodes were, besides the whole Goofy Rock thing, I feel that they were like solid okay episodes, and the Dino Thunder episode I think was a solid good. Solid good. Yeah, it's a solid good. Yeah. I'll just go with that. That seems very reasonable. I think there have been better Dino Thunder episodes that I've seen, but compared to uh, Dino Thunder episodes in general, like this is a pretty good one compared to a lot of others. So, anyways, let's go on to that double five. I think it's about that time yet again to, of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil all three of these episodes. So let's go into the Rangers Back in Time episodes. So we start off with me seeing the kids, or the Rangers, in school. And the funny thing about this kind of rock of time that is to supposedly have our Rangers go back in time, I guess there seems to have the Rangers only have one teacher and one teacher only, and that's Miss Appleby. And that was kind of like, okay, that doesn't make much sense. But not only that, when we are to actually go back in time, shouldn't Jason, Zach, and Trini be here instead of Atom, Rocky, and Aisha? Because if we're going back in time, we might as well have had a younger version of those three other Rangers, because that should be time travel. But I guess that's just me. So anyways, we have Miss Appleby, and she's having the students go through this kind of reflective phase, and is to bring in childhood photos. So we have Aisha that comes up first, and she's to talk about her recital, and is to have this picture with her grandmother. And so then Kimberly goes next, and this is her first gymnastics competition. And even though she didn't do well there, she is to like still like be happy about it. So Zed is to all of a sudden see Kimberly as her past self with this photo. And so we have Zed who's reflecting on like, well, hey, like if they want to go to the past so badly, how about we go on and use the Rock of Time to make the Rangers young and powerless? So we then go back to the Rangers, and they're talking about more of their photos, as we have Tommy, who is now be having a picture with his karate gear, and he, of course, is having his younger self be doing the splits, and it seems he has some trophy. And so Tommy doesn't really explain what's actually going on there, but it's just like, hey, the picture, yeah, isn't that great? We then have Billy go up next, and he is to, like, we start to have all these characters who are to have, like, some trait that they are to sell this picture with. And Billy is to talk about determination and how he was to be determined to put a vacuum together, and it took 4 hours. Then we have Rocky, who's to talk about his dog Buster, and we have Adam, who is with his dad working on a car. So Bulk and Skull are also to have their photo about the first time that they had ever become friends, and Bulk is to state that he didn't want to punch Skull out, so that's how they just became friends, oddly enough. So we then go back to Zed, who is talking to Goldar about activating the Rock of Time, and I'm like, you know what? Why couldn't you have just gone on and talk about the Rock of Time and then activate it? Why does there have to be a whole conversation about it? Anyways, so Zed is to activate the Rock of Time, and we start to slowly see the Earth start to turn back, as if we are basically just stealing this idea from the Superman movie of Superman kind of flying around the Earth, taking it off its axis to then have Superman kind of go back into reversing time. So we have Squad and Babu that are to question Zed and saying, well, isn't this plan a little bit too easy? Do you really think you're going to get away with it? And so immediately Zed should have just wiped out both Squad and Babu, because, again, I've always questioned, what were these two characters really good for anyways? And so really he should have just, took them both down and destroyed them or whatever, because what are they used for? What good are they? So Billy is to alert the teacher, Miss Appleby, that the clock seems to be broken or is kind of reversing time. And so Miss Appleby is asking the students, what should we do? As if they're going to know. Call a repairman? Anyways, so we have Alpha and Zordon that get alert of what is going on, and they know that it must be Zed's plan. Because, of course, we would never have, Alpha or Zordon, speculate something and it not be true, because it seems like they always have read the script and know what's going on. Or we are to always have the thought that maybe Alpha and Zordon may have some kind of weird, kind of goofy, ability of sorts to just kind of know things before they happen. Because, of course, certain people who go on and do Power Rangers reviews would probably state that Zordon probably has a psychic ability. Geekvolution probably would when they would review a Power Rangers movie review fairly recently, or do a unscripted way of talking about it. So we then go back to what I'm talking about here. So we find that the Rangers are to become young again. And so when we do have Kimberly needing to leave her desk, we have Bulk and Skull that are trying to go on and put a balloon underneath Kimberly's desk, but then the balloon falls off her chair, and both Bulk and Skull ends up getting hit with this slime balloon. So, because Kimberly was trying to solve this math problem, and when she goes back to her desk, Bulk and Skull were trying to plant this balloon. So, we have Aisha, who, again, is not Trini. or neither is Rocky or Adam, Jason or Zach, but still, it is what it is. So Aisha goes on to tell the teacher that Bulk and Skull had gone on to plant this balloon, and so this slime balloon, and so both Bulk and Skull ends up getting disciplined. Kimberly ends up complaining about ruining her outfit, and so now we're back to Alpha and Zordon that I'm assuming are gonna state the obvious, but also, what do I do half the time? Yeah, you just kind of let us know, like, what we should already know. So, we have Alpha that realizes the Rangers won't know they're Rangers anymore because their minds are to, of course, be like reverted back to their young age, and like time has rolled back, so it's like you don't get a younger version of the Rangers that still have all the knowledge that they've accumulated from. So yeah, so like it all goes back to that same time period. So we have Zordon, who is to, of course, know the perfect device to reverse this whole ordeal. And I'm like, of course he does. Of course, like, you know what? If Zordon just knows that they should have to create all of this stuff and do all these things, shouldn't they just have these devices just lying around? Like, if Zordon always knows, like, the perfect thing to always have, like, Alpha should have, like, so much time to kill because robot, and should just be creating all these, like, random things that they just have, like, in a shelf somewhere that they can just kind of pull out and just be like, oh yeah, I already have one of these created. Oh, good job. Because think about it, we had Dino Fury that they have, like, a bunch of keys that are just for random things that they are to just have for episodes. Like, why couldn't Alpha go on and, like, do the same thing? I don't know. It's just my thought of it all. So, Zordon forces Alpha to make a molecular descrambler, and we always have to have these random goofy words to have some device that is to really just make no sense brain logic wise of what the heck that even means. So we have Alpha that is to be tempted to want to teleport the Rangers to the command center, but Zordon refuses that request because he's like, no, like, you could frighten the Rangers in their state. And I'm like, I'm sorry, so you're gonna let the Rangers probably get attacked by Goldar or whatever thing that Zed is gonna dish out and frighten them still. But if the Rangers go to the command center with a floating head and a robot, like, they're gonna even be in worse state? Throw my hands up in the sky for this episode. So we go back into where, of course, the young Rangers are, the youngling Rangers. And so we have Aisha and Kim dancing. Like, Aisha is to, like, do this one dance move, and then cue to Billy and Adam, who are putting a kite together. And we all of a sudden have this kind of, like, couple that wants to just take a picture of these young kids, and I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. Maybe, like, they're going and taking this Polaroid camera and maybe they're gonna make like a painting or something out of it, or I don't know what they're like. Either way, this couple seems shady. I don't know what they're doing at this park, anyways, but it's very weird. So, coming to find out, Bulk and Skull are to not like that this couple is taking these photos, and so they're like, we gotta get them to be afraid of us by just having hot dogs in our mouths. And so they end up doing this like hot dog thing, and so the woman ends up getting put into this garbage can, and so we have the couple that loses the camera, and so Zed is like, I'm gonna go on and use this camera as a monster, but he doesn't state it right away. So we have Bulk and Skull that go on to be characters that the Rangers are kind of upset that they're kind of being bullies. And so what happens is that Bulk and Skull get tied up in this kite. And so Kimberly wants to go on and kiss Skull, because we still have to go on and keep playing with the fact that Skull and Kimberly are to bizarrely be an item, it seems. Like, there was a whole episode where we have like the love potion between both Skull and Kimberly, so we just consistently have to keep playing up the fact that both Skull and Kimberly are going to end up together at some point. Maybe that was the whole Dear John story with Power Ranger Zeo. Hey, we never know. Kimberly never goes on and states who her boyfriend is. It could have been Skull the whole time. Never know. That would actually make a lot of sense. Like, I don't know why Kimberly would have ended up with Skull, but hey, worse things could have happened. So, but we had Kimberly that was to tell Skull, it's like, well, hey, like, you want to kiss? And then Skull drops both Bulk and Skull and have them fall over. So Zen decides to send putties out. So we all of a sudden have the Rangers that are playing dodgeball, and the Rangers suddenly get surrounded by putties. These, of course, are the Z putties, and we have to have the Rangers, the younger Rangers, rediscover the whole Z is the way to take down these putties. We have a moment here where one of the putties is to have his hand out, and like that hand is to be like from this camera, and so it's just kind of this weird hand thing that is trying to grab onto the younglings or the youngins. And so I was like, okay, that seemed like a good idea at first, but then the longer that they went with it, the more it just kind of looked dumb. We also had the kids trying to fight these putties, and it just doesn't come off looking good. We had like the Kimberly moment where she just kind of has like all the putties just kind of fall onto one another, and like when Tommy tries to take down some of the putties, like it just doesn't look good. Adam, I think, goes on and tries to do something with the putties, and yeah, nothing just looks good. Rocky tosses the dodgeball to hit one of the putties in the back, and that putty should have been like, my back! Who threw that ball? But of course, putties don't speak. So, we again have the Rangers realize that hit the Z, and so they call that out, and so like, all right, so everybody just starts trying to go for the Z, and we then have this weird putty domino thing where one putty kind of smacks into the other, and then a a lined up number of putties just kind of all fall over and destroy themselves as usual. So Alpha is to watch on at what it all happened, and Alpha's like, wow, like, these Rangers were really lucky, and Zordon is to remind Alpha, like, oh no, like that's the reason why we had them become Rangers, is because they're always very creative, and like, they can think on their feet, and even as a younger version, like, still, like they could go on and take down this threat. And we also have Zordon reminding Alpha about, like, hey, but, like, you need to create that device. And Alpha's like, yeah, I get it. I'm just gonna go over here and I'll make the device. So we have, of course, Zed, who's like, well, like, I should really go on and create the photomare, and I should do it from this camera. So the photomare is to, of course, be created, and we have the photomare that captures the Rangers in one photo. And again, you would think that these young Rangers would just have a heart attack after all the horrible sights that they have seen here already. But hey, don't teleport them to the command center to have them be safe. No. Don't do any of that. So we, of course, have Alpha and Zordon that, again, are to state the obvious by telling us now that the Rangers are captured in this photo, and we also had Alpha, who is trying to quickly fix this device and ends up, like, kind of pinballing around all of these what are they called? Like, counter things that Alpha does all the button mashing with. I don't know what exactly they're called. I want to call them, like, God, I just had the word too. Components. Anyways, so we go on to have Zed, who is basking in his victory, and we, of course, again have Zordon, who's to tell Alpha, hey, work quicker on that device, and we again have them restate everything. So Bulk and Skull is to get the photo, and they run off with it. We have Zed that sends Goldar after the photo, even though they really could have just had Photomare get the photo for them. Instead, Zed sends Goldar out to... So, anyways, Goldar finds both Bulk and Skull, and we have Bulk and Skull that are to desperately cry for their mommy. And Goldar's like, well, I've never been called that before. And we have Zed, who's looking on at what Goldar is doing. I'm like, didn't we just see this scene? Zed is like, man, Goldar is not getting that photo fast enough. Like, come on, Goldar. Like, let's get busy. Like, man, do they waste so much time in this two-parter. So Alpha is finally done with this device, and Alpha is to need to get to that picture. And we have Alpha in this Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episode that is to really put the boots to not only Goldar and Photomare, but we come to find out that Alpha just has like all kinds of bags of tricks that Alpha can use to have me state, it's like, well, why wasn't Alpha ever a Ranger? Alpha just has all these gadgets. Like, man, like, come on, Alpha, become a Ranger for once. Because this is as close as it's gonna get. Why isn't Alpha in a game and using all these gadgets and whatever? Anyways, pushing on. So, we have Zordon that tells Alpha to use the laser stun scanner, and we have Alpha that appears in front of Goldar and is to use the laser sun scanner to take out Goldar, and he's just kind of frozen there in front of Bulk and Skull. And we also have Alpha that turns and takes out Photomare, and so it's frozen also. And Alpha is to run off to find both Bulk and Skull, who have run away from Robot. The funny thing is we had Bulk and Skull who were to question if Goldar was a good guy, but they don't go on and do the same to Alpha. And Alpha was to be the one that actually protected them from these two entities. These two monsters of sorts. So, we have Bulk and Skull that run off to Principal Kaplan, and we have them explaining their situation, and then Kaplan just puts them in detention, as per always, it seems, because we'll find out when this two-parter is to finish up that Bulk and Skull have been in detention since the 2nd grade. So, with, like, current day Bulk and Skull, them still being in detention by the end of this two-parter. So, we get Bulk and Skull in detention. Alpha appears in front of them as Alpha is to kind of teleport to different places and is to even talk to the principal. So, Alpha appears in front of Bulk and Skull and has them go to sleep, and is to take the photo from them, and then is to kind of de-photo the Rangers. And so now they're talking to Alpha, and Alpha needs to go on and explain to these kids that they are Power Rangers, and as Billy is to kind of poke Alpha. So we have Goldar and Photomare that are kind of released from their their stunned attack to then go after the Rangers. So we have Alpha that brings, of course, the Rangers back to their adult selves, as well as also having the Rangers like go and do all these, oh cool, all right, awesome. And I'm like, man, yeah, like we took quite a bit of this this two-parter and kind of really didn't have the Rangers in it. I'm like, how many times have we got on to need to write out the Rangers in so many of these episodes for Mighty Morphin, but it still goes on and makes a pretty decent episode regardless. So we have Zordon calling the Rangers, stating that Photomare is attacking the town, and so Photomare becomes bigger, and so we have Tommy that goes on, and like all the Rangers are of course morphed. We have Tommy that tells Rocky that he needs to go on and call for his Zord, which of course is the Red Dragon Thunder Zord, and at some point it goes into warrior mode. So we have Tommy go on and be fighting Goldar and Putties while we have the other Rangers calling for their Zords. They're like, why not just have all the Rangers call the Zords at the same time? I get it's a way to write in the fact that they have to duplicate the Red Dragon Thunder Zord in warrior mode, but still to make that evil clone or evil copy. But it just seems very weird. Because we have Tommy who is fighting all of the Putties, and I'm like, why aren't the Rangers all there to help Tommy out? But instead they're calling for their Zords. So and we even have Tommy who is to call out for the, like, okay guys, like, initiate the Thunder Megazord. I'm like, Tommy, doesn't he have his own sword? Why is Tommy calling the shots for the Thunder Megazord? I don't get it. So we have Tommy who is to fight Goldar. And so I'm like, okay, so we have to have like these two different fights going on. And I'm like, okay, like I can love the fact that we have another Tommy Goldar fight, as well as a Megazord versus basically just the Red Dragon Zord in warrior mode, and or Thunder Zord. So the evil copy. So we have the Megazord get into Thunder Saber mode, and it's to wipe out both the monster and Zord. And Tommy is to kick Goldar, and the Rangers reappear to assist Tommy, and Goldar decides to vanish. And so now the Rangers are getting a call from Zordon stating that the Earth is becoming unstable because of the Rock of Time, and that Zordon is going to teleport them to the location of the Rock of Time so they can destroy it. So Zed is to tell like Goldar, like, hold on a minute, like you're trying to come back here. No, you go right back down to Earth with some putties to defend the Rock of Time. So we have the Rangers show up and see the Rock of Time, and that's when we start to get all these other monsters start to show up because Zed calls for them also. And I'm like, shouldn't 3 monsters and Goldar be good enough? Why do we have to have putties? But that's just me. We have the invincible fly trap. We have the drag or the dram mole, and we have the Oyster Eyes, or goofiest names that we have to have here. And so we have these monsters going on and fighting the Rangers as well as the Putties. And it seems that the Rangers go on to quickly take these monsters out. Because, of course, the Rangers use their weapons, which I was like, yeah, I think all the other times I would see the Rangers fighting against a bunch of monsters, like, I wouldn't normally see them use much of their weapons. So I guess that kind of quickly takes these monsters out uh, more so than usual. So after the monsters and the Putties all start to be defeated, we have Goldar then immediately is like, well, hey, I'm getting out of here. So we have the Rangers that uses the power cannon on the Rock of Time, and now the Earth is to go back to what is to be present time instead of what was the past. So we have Zed that is obviously just so upset that he ends up stating some weird, obscure thing about burning his biscuits. I didn't know Zed ate biscuits. Alright. So, the Rangers now looking on at this classroom, seeing Bulk and Skull, are to talk about their younger lives and how, of course, those might have been happier times when they didn't have to learn so quickly and they could kind of take their time with things. So we had the principal that comes into this classroom, and it's to talk to Bulk and Skull, and neither one of them really remember like why they're there, but they're there anyways. And so Kim is to state, it's like, well, Bulk and Skull, it seems, have been in detention since the second grade, as they're forced to now go on and write on the chalkboard numerous times over. And that, of course, is how we finish up this second two-parter. So now going on to the Dino Thunder episode. It seems that through this episode, I was to actually go on and try and like figure things out, because of course whenever I go into two different seasons, I have to go on and kind of list certain things, like, okay, like what's their command center for this season, what's the evil for this season, and whatever, so I can kind of easily do my notes. So there was some actual stuff that I had, of course, that wasn't even a factor. Like, the Dino Lab really never comes up in this episode, so I was like, wow, what a wasted thing that I did. But there's sometimes where there was a lot of, like, Zord combinations in this Dino Thunder episode, and I was like, man, how am I going to know what all these things are? Because they also, like, change so often. There was even one time in this episode where they switched a Zord combination just to not use that Zord and have Tommy go like flying out of the Zord, and I was like, what a waste of time that was. But anyways, let's go on and let's talk about this episode. So Trent is to talk to Mercer and congratulate him for getting the Green Leaf Award. And so Mercer is to talk about, like, well, yeah, like, I have had success with certain plants, but also I've had some experimental failures, and that, of course, is to be talking about him trying to cure himself of no longer being Mesagog. And Trent is telling Mercer, it's like, well, do you think that we should have you, like, to talk to the Rangers and maybe we can kind of figure out some kind of solution? And we have Mercer that is a Teltran. It's like, no, like I think I can go on and figure something out. And we then have Cassie and Devin that are to interrupt Mercer to interview him. And so I'm not going to go into the details about this whole interview because really it was just a lot of blah blah talk that I don't really think mattered in the end goal of things. But by the end of this, we have Mesagog who is to start to refeel feelings about him possibly going to need to change from Mercer to Mesagog. And so we have Trent who kind of cuts the interview short. So Elsa is talking with the White Green Ranger, and I liked this conversation because it sets up why the evil White Ranger is to be how he is. And I was like, good, so I don't need to go on and like watch like another Dino Thunder episode to understand why this White Ranger is even there. And so I thought that that was really cool. And so Elsa states that Zeltrax was to create this evil White Ranger, and they're starting to find out that both White Rangers can't exist in the same plane of existence. And we have this evil Ranger that is a state like, well, like I'm going to go on and take all the Rangers out. I'm going to take Trent down also. So Mercer transforms into Mesagog, and he starts destroying all of these plants. And he destroys all these plants to then come up with this plan to grow a winner instead of relying on Elsa for this episode. The evil White Ranger is to appear on Ethan's computer and is to want to go on and call him out and challenge all the Rangers. Ethan is to have the Rangers kind of surround him and kind of talk this out. And why isn't anybody saying like, aha, I knew they were all the Rangers? Because shouldn't they have gone on and heard this discussion from anybody nearby? But maybe this place was deserted or had nobody in it. I don't know. Like the shot was so close that you couldn't really know if there were other people in this place that they were in or not. So Mesagog is forced to create a monster instead of relying on Elsa. So he of course has this plant in front of him. And the next thing we see is that all the Rangers, even including Tommy, who wasn't there for that challenge, is to come off their raptor cycles to find possibly where the evil White Ranger is because he's not in front of them. The evil White Ranger appears and starts to like speed attack through the Rangers and is really wiping them all out and is to ask like, well, hey, where is the White Ranger? Where is Trent? So the evil White Ranger is to call for the Dino Stega Megazord. And we, of course, had the Rangers that are like, well, like this guy is to really want to get down to business. So Connor calls for the Shield of Triumph. and they call also for the Mesodon Megazord. And so the combination of the Triassic Mega Rover brings them to the Tricer Max Megazord. Say that a lot. So we have Mesogog that is to finally create the Jade Gladiator as Elsa is to realize the evil ranger is running out of power. And he can't even control the Zord that he's in anymore. So the Power Rangers use the Tricera Lance, and we have Trent that realizes that he's to get his Zord back and his groove back. Maybe, I don't know. So Haley is to explain to the Rangers that since the evil White Ranger is cloned, that again, they the evil White Ranger and the White Ranger just can't exist. And so Tommy is to tell Haley to call Trent, and Trent is to talk about a problem with his Dino gem. And then he sees the evil White Ranger. The evil White Ranger goes into Dino mode, all while the Rangers are to call for their Zords because they are to see a giant Jade Gladiator making his way into town. And so, of course, the Megazord that all combines together is the Thundersaurus Megazord. We have Ethan that calls for the Stegozord, and Tommy calls for a Wave Strike, which I thought was like a really cool, interesting kind of like tidal wave like thing. And so we have the Megazord that uses the Stegozord as this kind of like surfboard, and they call it like a surfboard Zord kind of thing. So the Rangers try to do this attack. The Jade Gladiator sees this coming. It's like, I'm not falling for that. And kind of takes down the Megazord. So the attack fails. The two White Rangers are fighting. And so the evil White Ranger tells Trent that only one White Ranger will survive. It's like, you feel that, right? So we have the Jade Gladiator that morphs into this giant plant and is to bring back two other monsters, or to have one monster that seems to only be for this episode. Because we have Deadwood, who is to have been in an episode called The Passion of Connor, as well as this episode. And we have another monster called Scorch that I guess is to have only been for this episode. We have the Jade plant that is to kind of root its way into town, which starts to destroy certain roads and streets and whatever. So Trent is to call out the evil White Ranger for being soulless, And we have them just kind of continue fighting. The Rangers end up losing their Megazord. So Tommy is forced to become the Dino Stegazord Ankylo Drill Parasaur Final Cut. And yeah, he uses the double strike, and then Trent uses his Drago sword to cut through the evil red or the evil white ranger, and finally then destroys him. And so the evil ranger knew this was going to happen eventually, that one of them were going to have to die here. So we bizarrely have the Dino Stegazord that is to change combinations and have different Zords be attached to it, just for Tommy to go flying out of that Zord after these monsters are to kind of wipe him out. So a lot of just Zord work here, and I would have liked to have just kind of seen like the Jade Gladiator, like not just be the like the Megazord part of it. I would like to have seen him like actually fight the Rangers, but it is what it is with this show. We of course have to have two different kind of sequences kind of going on here, and like it seems that these episodes are actually quite similar, and I thought it was like, all right, like anyways, we have Trent that comes back to the Rangers, and they're questioning. It's like, well, like, is it Trent or is it the evil one? And we have Trent that powers down just to remorph with the rest of the Rangers. Oh, if I didn't also state it, I think I did state that the evil Ranger went into Super Dino mode. But like it never really play like the Super Dino mode never really plays into the like it doesn't have any like specialty moves, so I guess it really doesn't ever matter if to mention the Super Dino mode. But anyways, so again, we have the Megazord go into the Dino Drill attack, and to take out Scorched. Jade is attacked by the Dragozord, and so Connor asks Trent if he's ready to be in a Megazord, and they now the Thundosaurus in full power, and they have at some point where it just kind of becomes the Valkasaurus Megazord, which combines like every single Zord that they can possibly have, like all crammed into like one Zord, it seems. And we have the Megazord that kind of like surfs off of the Brachiozord. And I was like, okay, this is kind of like a cool attack. We start to have them kind of throw these like axe things at the Jade Gladiator, and kind of do the finishing touches to like finish all these monsters off. So Elsa is realizing that Mesagog no longer wants her help, and Mesagog is planning on like, well, like I think I should just try and go on and strike at Mesagog while he's weakest, while he's possibly just Mercer, before Mesagog like takes out Elsa. So Trent is to talk to Mercer and is to just kind of ask like how he is, and Mercer is to like, yeah, I'm fine, and then Mercer leaves. We have Trent that goes on to talk to Kira, and Kira tells Trent, it's like, well, like your dad's really smart, like he'll figure out what to do. And Trent's like, well, I hope so. And that's kind of how they wrap up the episode. So with that said, that ends up having me wrap up this review. For the whole spoiler part, like I did go on and probably complain quite a bit, or really just be kind of derailed when I was to try to figure out what to say at certain points. But thank you for going on and listening to this. If you were to do so, thank you for going on and just kind of taking the time to be at some point any part of these reviews or whichever. Like, so with that said, I'm going to go on and just try to get out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about these episodes. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.